Welcome to Slash Forward. In this video, we're going to figure your odds against the monsters from the 2002 creature feature, They. Hit that like button if you've been marked. We're forming a support group. To start, I'll unpack the storyline to see what we can learn. Let's get to it. We open on a young boy calling for his mama due to a thunderstorm. He delicately broaches the topic of sleeping in her bed.
You're almost 6, Billy.
Why can't you act like more of a man, boy? In fairness, he does tell her that they come for him in the dark. As a consolation, she does a quick monster check and then gets back to her me time downstairs, as young Billy drifts off to sleep, but then wakes up shortly thereafter with the sense that there's a presence in the room. Some strange phenomena has him calling for his mommy and pulling the covers over his head as something unseen crawls around outside. Whatever it is waits until he's bored enough to pop out again, and then it drags him under. Flash forward 19 years to the big city. We watch Julia just dominating the mean streets on her single speed and learn via answering machine exposition that she's a well-liked, intelligent woman about town. She takes a break from her dissertation to grace Paul with her presence at their favorite grunge bar. He uses the old push-pull flirting technique, complimenting her a little and then putting her down a little just to keep her intrigued. She then goes hard on the pool table, winning a double or nothing single pocket bet, an obvious precursor to boudoir shenanigans. Unfortunately, they get back to Paul's place to find his burnout stoner friends straight chilling on the couch. They push through this, but then are interrupted by a call. Julia is too important not to answer, but finds out it's just her old friend Billy, looking for a shoulder to cry on. She goes to him, but Paul makes sure that she's aware that he can only wait so long. She arrives at the diner, barely recognizing her haggard, greasy pal. He's come to her because as kids, they both suffered night terrors. He claims these events marked him, and that the entities responsible are back now to take him, since he's all grown up and juicy as hell. He warns her that babies just no, so if she notices disturbed children or flickering lights, she should keep moving. There may be others who are afflicted, but his research has hit a dead end, and he's at the end of his rope mentally, so he takes extreme action to drive out the fear. She turns in for the night at Paul's place, but is awoken that evening by a phone call. On the other end of the line is just some gobbledygook, so she wanders off to see if Paul's in the shower. Turns out it's just a ghost shower that's possibly related to general plumbing issues. Then the lights begin to flicker, and behind the mirror, a gateway to an oily hellscape. The revelation causes her tremendous distress that escalates into a violent attack, which she cannot remember afterward. At Billy's funeral, she meets his old college roomies, Sam and Terry, who have absolutely nothing to offer at this time.
Well, you know, he was taking Prozac. I guess it didn't work.
Let's take it easy. So she heads upstairs to peruse Billy's research and battery collection. Terry joins her here to try to smooth things over by revealing that they connected with Billy at school due to also having a history of childhood night terrors, the thread that binds them all. On the way home, Julia's spoken word jam mix starts skipping.
Did like tiny silver beads and counted before sleeping.
Then, from the darkness, some sort of slinky dog beast hops out at her, forcing her off the road. When the electricals then crap out completely, she gives her a once-over and starts yanking on some wires, the light from which seems to spook a critter nearby. The sound of this drives her back into the car, where a vision of Billy startles her right into the path of a passing box truck. This must have run off the creatures, because her ute then fires right back up, and soon she's jamming out to some classic early 2000s butt rock. She gets to Paul's place before he has a chance to put up his mature facade, and it pisses her right the hell off to see him drinking with the boys. I mean, it's not even Saturday. She tries to relay her trauma about possibly hitting something, but she's not sure what, and causing unknown damage to her car. Maybe. But he points out that he's been pulling dead bodies out of mangled vehicles all week in the real world and deserves to blow off some steam. Later, Terry and Sam swing by to drop off Billy's diary to see if Julia can make any sense of it. It's mostly just ramblings about strange somethings that lurk in the dark due to their fear of the light. It's also revealed here that they've all been having recurrences of their night terrors since Billy's passing. Julia brushes this off as a natural reaction to the stress, but recognizing that Julia doesn't remember the severity of what they went through, Terry tells the story of the time she woke up from a childhood night terror to realize the demon she had stabbed in the ass was actually her dad who she stabbed in the eye. So these feelings returning is no small thing. Looking to reconnect with this, she goes to visit Dr. Booth, her old childhood therapist. He drops some basic info about night terrors for our benefit, since Julia is completing a dissertation in psychology and suggests recent stresses may be causing her flare-up. Since he don't give away the goods for free, he suggests an official follow-up session to work through this. Once home, Julia heads to the dark, dank storage basement of her building to retrieve a box and sidestep a creeper. Meanwhile, we circle back to Sam making art, I guess, while Terry sits on the couch picking at her weeping leg wound. After Sam leaves to go get some fresh air, she's barely able to get back to diddling her leg before she hears a rustling noise. Thinking she caught a fat rat, she checks the duct only to see that it got away with a free snack. Then, for some reason, she sits in there flicking her lighter until she gets it to fire up, just in time to startle away some sort of something. We then learn Julia was pulling some old tapes of her sleep studies, which really hits her in her feelings bone. As she watches her young self scream in terror, she decides instead to get back to her dissertation defense, but is soon lured away again by the softer sciences. She pores over the information, working to unravel the mysteries contained inside her own brain, right up until bedtime. This, we learn, also happens to be the perfect time to hit the pool, so Terry gets herself rinsed off and leaks into the shower before hitting her laps in solitude, right up until the lights go out. Recognizing she's not alone, she swims out of the pool and ducks into the locker room, where she stands around until a creature much larger than the one from the air vent comes for her. Julia then wakes up suddenly, remembering she has to finish her defense. Unfortunately, it's morning, so she flips the switch to go mode and starts serving up knowledge to these intellectual fat cats in their ivory tower. It's all going really well until she forgets some of her talking points and completely falls apart. At home, Paul leaves a message insisting that he wants to know how things went.
I'm gonna harass you until you call me back.
Classic Paul. So when the phone rings again, she jumps right up to grab it, but is surprised to hear Sam. He invites her to what is now his bachelor pad and lets her know that Terry has gone missing. In response, he's been devouring Billy's old diary and says that Billy thinks he was taken to their world and marked as a child. The reappearance of the mark coincided with their return. He suspected they were tracking him in some way and pulled a foreign object from his wound. Now Sam has a mark that's similar to Terry's mark, and your boy is scared. Later at her session, Julia tries striking up a casual conversation with a child.
Where's your mom?
Heaven.
And she learns a valuable life lesson. Sarah confirms she's also aware of some unknown entity coming for her to eat her, and only light seems to keep they away. Julia reveals these learnings to Dr. Bloom, insisting this is not emotional trauma, it's a true physicality, but he suggests she work through the case as a professional, and she basically does his job for him, unraveling the constructs in her mind that make her the way she is. She then submits to a brief exam from Paul to verify if she has a mark that's emerged. When nothing is found, she goes ahead and lets her guard down a little. Back at the studios, Sam starts hearing noises, and we watch as the heat wafts up to pop his sprinklers. He thinks better of rushing out, which is smart because there's a monster approaching from the hallway, and looking for an alternative, he gives up a good thing with the window and instead uses the elevator, which ends up being a Final Destination style death drop to the bottom. He survives this, but is not spared. Then, after some mediocre sex and a fresh humiliation, Julia heads home, where she discovers from the news that the city is suffering from a series of rolling blackouts. They seem to be already affecting her in her apartment, localized inside her closet, where she peers in to find that she has a monster problem. After running out and entering a sketchy bathroom, she realizes she never checked past her hairline. Sure enough, there's a sore there, and following the hints from Billy's diary, she gets up in it to see what she can find. And Yahtzee, she pulls out a tracer, which they don't seem to actually need to locate their prey. So there. She runs immediately to Paul, to whom she describes the events and the foreign object she found, which she didn't keep as evidence. And as she rambles, he makes a quick assessment of her mental state before slipping her one of his patented relaxation roofies. Rather than trusting him with her unconscious body, she instead heads for the comforting embrace of the subway, the heartbeat of the city, so vital and full of life. Except at closing time, so she hops on a passing train which then stops about 50 feet away. She gets out and tries to follow the lights, but gets tackled by some monsters. Luckily, the train comes back online, scaring them off. Unluckily, it then slowly rolls away from her, casting her back into darkness. She proceeds now through the tunnels, following whatever light sources she can find for temporary reprieve until she is eventually attacked again. This time a train passes, but it doesn't scare the creatures off. She manages to escape on her own, and confused by the rules of the movie, she makes a final attempt to get to street level. Unfortunately, she's dragged down and surrounded by an unreasonable quantity of monsters. She manages to find a sizable shard of glass and begins slashing at anything that moves, which ends up being a cadre of subway workers on their break, one of whom takes his chance to tee off on her face like a true American hero. Julia wakes up screaming to find Paul and Dr. Booth both there, trying to calm her and get her back into bed for some much-needed rest. As she goes to stare at them from the window, we find that she's locked up in a mental ward. Then her window breaks and Dr. Booth returns with an orderly to find that she's apparently escaped a locked room, leaving no trace behind. But we see that she's actually trapped behind an invisible wall inside the dark realm, where she has apparently become food to fuel their lithe and oily bodies. With that now established, let's get to the question of whether you could survive this ordeal. It's not entirely clear what the mechanism of their involvement is here in terms of how they choose people and why. However, once they get their claws in you, it seems unlikely that there's a chance to come out on top. While we never see them really do much other than startle children and jump out at folks, it is implied by Sarah that their intent is to eat you, so the stakes for getting caught are maxed out. Given that, we never see anyone damage any of them, so we have no idea how resilient the monsters are. Regardless, they are Aliens 2 level mindless swarmers. Their sheer volume and ability to drag you into the Netherrealm would put a severe damper on any intent one may have to go on living a full and happy life. Beside that, there are other indications that these creatures are full-on manifestations of the mind. When Julia wakes up in her hospital room at the end, there's a corkboard on the wall that seems to have personal effects. With the closet essentially empty and no other indication that there's a roommate, it would imply that the personals belong to her. The behavior of her familiars is also confounding. This could imply that she's been at the hospital for a long time and that everything that takes place within the film is happening inside of her delicate, twisted mind. If they truly are manifestations of the mind, then what chance would anyone really have? Given these two possible scenarios, I would have to put your chances of survival at approximately 0.0%, assuming of course that you've been stricken with the mark of the beast. There is one other possibility worth exploring since we don't know if the prior presumptions are true. Their only weakness seems to be light. However, light only keeps them back. It doesn't make them go away completely. The light levels also seem to be mostly under their control. In addition, they seem to be fully willing to attack in relatively normal light level situations. Assuming the eventual attack to be inevitable, it should be noted that those who ignored them were dragged off, never to be seen again. But those who fought back always found the creatures they lashed out at to actually be people. Perhaps the answer is to find the proper balance. Accept the situation as it is and try to go on with your life as normally as possible, dealing with the situation of finding yourself unexpectedly in limited light situations until confrontation is inevitable, and then just give your assailant a moderate strength shoulder punch. You know, something hard enough to get the reveal that it's a person you're punching, but not hard enough to cause any physical damage and get you in much trouble. Perhaps in that way one could technically beat the monsters, although it would relegate you to YouTube prank channel levels of living a life spent annoying strangers. So you'd have to weigh the outcomes to make the choice that works best for you. Before we go, I'd like to give a huge thanks to my donors memorialized in the Hall of Headshots. And as an FYI, I have a website set up where you can support the channel through donations or merch. Any donation unlocks uncensored movie reviews of Life Force and Under the Skin, with others to be added over time. If you enjoyed the video, I'd love for you to become a part of the channel by subscribing. Thanks for watching.